Hello, I'm Donna Straub, and I'm here to talk to you today about our annual stewardship season, when we ask you to prayerfully consider your financial commitment to the ministries and missions of Decatur Presbyterian Church. In keeping with the theme of the church year, Wide Open Doors, we are using scriptures which contain a door to help us understand our relationship to and our obligations toward God. Today we are considering the Gospel of John, chapter 10, verse 9. Jesus says, "I am the door. Whoever enters in through me shall be saved, and will come in and go out and find pasture." Now, to understand why Jesus made such a strange statement, we need to back up a little in his stories to a time when he brought his ministry back to his hometown of Nazareth. On the Sabbath, he went to the synagogue and began to lecture to the scribes and the elders, and they were amazed at his wisdom. They were, that is, until they realized who he was. After all, they knew his family, his brothers, his sisters, his parents, and they knew he was a carpenter, and couldn't get past the fact that this carpenter was in the synagogue, presuming to teach them. Now, doesn't this make you just want to take the Nazarenes aside and say, look, you just don't get the big picture? Sure, he was a carpenter, but he was also the Son of God. Well, maybe we don't get the full picture either. Perhaps we think that Jesus' vocation as a carpenter is incidental to the story, and that his wisdom springs from his divinity. But what if his vocation as a carpenter is in some way related to that wisdom? Now, to say that Jesus was a carpenter means that a little bit is lost in translation. The Greek word for Jesus' vocation is tekton. A carpenter, to be sure, but a builder, a skilled craftsman, a little broader definition. And this makes sense because in the Nazareth of Jesus' day, there wasn't a lot of wood, and the houses that Jesus built would have been made out of thatch or stone. The wood that he had would have been reserved for beams or furniture or an essential item like the door. We have stories that tell us about Jesus' birth and his childhood, but Scripture is strangely silent from then up until Jesus begins his ministry in earnest, which makes us wonder, what was he waiting for? We know from the Scriptures that he was dazzling the priests in the synagogue when he was just a child. So why did he wait for 2 decades toiling before he began his ministry? Well, what if that work was in fact preparation for ministry? What if Jesus wanted to understand the world he had been sent to save, not only with his brain and with his eyes and with his ears, but also with his hands? Now, when Jesus does begin his ministry, he explains divine concepts through the vocabulary of work. When Jesus talks about the parable of the sower, we get the sense that Jesus learned the hard way where those seeds needed to be planted. When Jesus says the rejected stone is now made the cornerstone, we see him as a builder who has sorted and selected and placed those stones. And when Jesus says, "I am the door," he speaks as a carpenter who has shaped and sized and hung them. So there's a reason that Decatur Presbyterian Church has not only ministries but missions. Spend a Saturday with the Habitat Build. Who are these volunteers but tektons? Or spend an afternoon with the volunteers in our Threshold Center, which is built on the image of an open door, watching them navigate the maddening web that society has created by its indifferent and inadequate response to poverty. Does anyone doubt that this work is not showing us an aspect of Christ's love? Jesus knew about doors. He knew they had to let you in for solace and salvation. And he knew they had to let us out to find pastures for ourselves and for the other children of God that he loved so much. Jesus realized his contribution through his ministries and his mission. Through your contribution to Decatur Presbyterian Church, you can help us to realize both of his objectives. 500 years ago, 95 theses were nailed to a door that was firmly closed. Today, the wide open doors of Decatur Presbyterian Church not only beckon us in for worship, but lead us out into the world of work, just the way the carpenter created them. Thank you for considering our request.